The Steelers' 2025 season is barely a week old, and yet the roster is already telling us a deeper story about transition, evaluation, and quiet reshaping behind the scenes. This isn't about splashy headlines or blockbuster moves. This is about the organization making calculated decisions at the margins. Decisions that often matter more than fans realize when September turns into December. And it starts with a moment that caught many people off guard. Adam Thielen is no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler. After being claimed off waivers from the Minnesota Vikings on December 2nd, Thielen announced his retirement following a 12-season NFL career. His time in Pittsburgh was short, but it was real. In the regular season, Thielen recorded 11 receptions for 117 yards, averaging 10.6 yards per catch, and added 2 receptions for 25 yards in the wildcard game. There was never a promise that this would be a long-term partnership, but his veteran presence, even in a limited role, carried weight. His retirement closes that chapter immediately and forces the Steelers to lean even more into youth, development, and internal competition at the receiver position. That theme becomes impossible to ignore when you look at what the team did next. Following the conclusion of the season, the Steelers signed 16 players to reserve future contracts. These are not random names. Many spent significant time on the practice squad in 2025, and a few bring outside experience that reflects how wide the Steelers cast their net when searching for depth and upside. Starting with special teams, long snapper Cal Adamitis stands out not just for his position, but for his roots. A Pittsburgh native who played at Central Catholic High School and the University of Pittsburgh, Adamitis was signed to the practice squad on December 19th after spending time with the Philadelphia Eagles. He originally entered the league as an undrafted free agent with the Cincinnati Bengals after the 2022 NFL Draft and appeared in 49 games with them. This is a player who understands the grind of the league and now gets another opportunity with his hometown team. On the defensive line, Kyler Baugh represents a developmental investment. Signed during training camp and spending most of the season on the practice squad, Baugh entered the NFL as an undrafted rookie with the New Orleans Saints following the 2024 NFL Draft. His journey includes stops with the New York Giants and the Atlanta Falcons practice squad. At Minnesota, he appeared in 26 games, recording 77 tackles, 7 tackles for a loss, and 4 sacks. After beginning his college career at Houston Baptist, the production is there, but this is about projection and growth. The receiver room continues to quietly evolve with names like Cole Burgess, originally signed by the Cincinnati Bengals as an undrafted free agent after the 2024 NFL Draft. Burgess spent the season on their practice squad before landing this reserve future deal. Coming from Division III SUNY Queensland, where he put up 816 yards and 11 touchdowns in his final season, Burgess is a reminder that the Steelers are still willing to search beyond the traditional pipelines for offensive talent. Defensively, Anthony Goodlow adds another layer of depth. Signed to the practice squad on November 24th, Goodlow's NFL path began with the Los Angeles Rams as an undrafted free agent in 2024. He spent time with the Arizona Cardinals practice squad and was elevated to the active-inactive roster for 3 games in 2025. At Oklahoma State, he recorded 42 tackles, 7 tackles for a loss, and 3 sacks. After starting his college career at Tulsa, he's another example of a player the Steelers clearly want to keep developing in their system. In the secondary, Daquan Hardy's signing reflects versatility and experience. Drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the 6th round of the 2024 NFL Draft, Hardy spent time on practice squads before landing with the Steelers in 2025. His college resume at Penn State includes 48 games, 5 interceptions, 25 passes defensed, and a notable impact as a returner. With 2 punt returns, 4 touchdowns in his senior season, Jack Henderson and KJ Henry both illustrate how fluid the bottom of an NFL roster really is. Henderson signed to the Steelers practice squad on October 6th before being released. Originally came into the league as an undrafted free agent with the Carolina Panthers after the 2025 NFL Draft and also spent time with Tampa Bay. Henry, a 5th-round pick by the Washington Commanders in 2023, has already played for multiple teams and brings 14 career games of experience. including 2.5 sacks, after a productive college career at Clemson. Offensively, Max Hurlman is an intriguing special teams-driven addition. Signed after a rookie minicamp tryout in 2025, Hurlman spent the season on the practice squad across 5 college seasons, including time at Colgate and Notre Dame. He appeared in 51 games and built a reputation as a punt returner, averaging 7.2 yards per return. D'Shawn Jamison's name should be familiar to fans who followed the practice squad closely. He was elevated multiple times in 2025, including games against the Bengals, Browns, Ravens, and the wildcard matchup with the Texans. Originally signed by the San Francisco 49ers as an undrafted free agent in 2023, Jamison has real NFL game experience, including 15 appearances with the Carolina Panthers that season. In the trenches, Stephen Jones and Doug Nestor represent continuity. Jones spent the entire 2025 season on the practice squad after being signed to a reserve future contract following 2024, while Nestor returned after another year in the system, bringing extensive college starting experience from West Virginia, where he didn't allow a sack during the 2023 season. At running back, Lou Nichols brings pass production into the building. Drafted by the Green Bay Packers in 2023, Nichols led the nation with 1,710 rushing yards at Central Michigan in 2021. He spent 2025 on the Steelers practice squad and was elevated once, contributing on special teams. The receiver depth continues with John Reese Plumlee and Brandon Smith, both of whom have bounced between teams but bring versatility and experience. Plumlee, a former quarterback at Central Florida and Mississippi, offers athletic flexibility, while Smith has appeared in NFL games and even spent time in the UFL with the DC Defenders. Finally, Julius Welschof and Aiden Williams round out the list, with Welschof continuing his development after time at Michigan and Charlotte, and Williams bringing size and consistency from Minnesota Luth after stops with the Steelers and Carolina Panthers.
All of this paints a clear picture. The Steelers are quietly reinforcing their foundation, prioritizing development, depth, and familiarity with the system rather than chasing headlines. This is the first part of a larger story about how this roster is being shaped heading deeper into 2025. Based on everything laid out here, how do you feel about the direction the Steelers are taking with these reserve/future signings and the early roster changes? And do you see any of these moves having a real impact as the season unfolds? What really matters now is understanding why the Steelers place so much value on this specific group of players and why these moves, while quiet, are never accidental. When you look closely, this isn't just a collection of camp bodies. It's a reflection of how the organization evaluates risk, development, and roster flexibility in a league where depth is tested every single week. Reserve/future contracts are about control and continuity. The Steelers are essentially saying these players are worth another full offseason in the building, another training camp, another chance to be coached within their system. For a franchise that values stability and internal growth, this is not filler. It's infrastructure. Most of these players already know the terminology, the expectations, and the culture. That matters when injuries pile up or when a player needs to be elevated quickly without disrupting the locker room. Take the defensive side of the ball as a whole. Names like Kyler Baugh, Anthony Goodlow, KJ Henry, Julius Welschof, Daquan Hardy, Jack Henderson, and Sean Jamison all point to one clear emphasis: competition and versatility. These are players who have moved between practice squads, active rosters, and multiple organizations. That experience, even without star recognition, creates adaptability. The Steelers have always valued defenders who can step into different roles without mental breakdowns, and this group fits that mold. Sean Jamison is a perfect example. He wasn't just stashed away all season. He was elevated for meaningful games, including divisional matchups and a playoff appearance. That tells you the coaching staff trusted him enough to put him on the field when the stakes were high. That kind of trust doesn't disappear once the season ends. It becomes part of the evaluation going forward. On offense, the message is just as clear. The departure of Adam Thielen through retirement removes a veteran safety net, even if his role was limited. In response, the Steelers didn't chase a replacement name from outside this list. Instead, they doubled down on development and flexibility. Cole Burgess, Max Hurlman, John Reese Plumlee, and Brandon Smith all bring different skill sets, backgrounds, and paths to the league. Some are return capable. Some have positional versatility. Some have already experienced the pressure of bouncing between teams and leagues. That hunger matters. John Reese Plumlee stands out in particular because of his unique college career. A quarterback-turned-receiver is not a common profile, but it does speak to athleticism and adaptability. That kind of player can offer creative options in practice, on scout teams, and potentially in specialized packages. Even if that never translates to a permanent role, the value during the week is real. Up front, the offensive line additions might be the least flashy but among the most important. Stephen Jones and Doug Nestor are not unknown quantities inside the building. Jones spent the entire season on the practice squad after being signed to a reserve/future deal previously, while Nestor has proven durability and pass protection consistency from his college days. Offensive line depth is rarely appreciated until it's gone, and the Steelers clearly don't want to be scrambling there. Lou Nichols adds another layer to the running back room, even if his 2025 contribution was limited to special teams. His college production at Central Michigan wasn't accidental, and having a player with that resume available for competition keeps pressure on everyone ahead of him. The Steelers have always believed that competition sharpens the roster from top to bottom. Then there's Cal Adamitis, whose story resonates beyond the stat sheet. A Pittsburgh native wearing black and gold isn't just a feel-good detail, it's also about familiarity with expectations, with the weight of representing this franchise. At a position where consistency and trust are everything, that background can make a difference in tight roster battles. Aiden Williams rounds out the picture with size, durability, and a track record of consistent college play. Offensive tackles who can handle heavy snap counts don't grow on trees, and even if he's still developing, keeping him in the system is a calculated move. When you zoom out, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The Steelers are not panicking. They are not overreacting to short-term results. They are reinforcing the foundation of the roster while leaving room for competition, growth, and internal surprises. This is how a franchise sustains itself year after year, even when the headlines aren't loud. This second part completes the picture of what these moves really mean. It's not about guarantees. It's about opportunity, structure, and preparation for everything a long NFL season can throw at a team. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these players do you believe has the best chance to break through? And do you feel confident in the Steelers' approach to building depth this way? What often gets overlooked in conversations like this is how these decisions ripple forward into training camp and preseason, where jobs are not given but taken. The Steelers know exactly what they are doing by keeping this many players who have already lived inside the system. Every rep in OTAs, every snap in camp, every preseason series becomes more efficient when players already understand expectations. That efficiency is a competitive advantage, even if it never shows up on a highlight reel. There's also a clear financial and strategic element here. Reserve/future contracts allow the front office to preserve flexibility while continuing evaluation. These players are not locked-in starters, but they are not outsiders either. They are in the middle ground where coaching matters most. For a staff that prides itself on development, that middle ground is where real roster wins are created. Look again at the defensive backs alone. Daquan Hardy, Jack Henderson, and Sean Jamison all bring different strengths, but they share one thing in common: game exposure, whether in college or the NFL, in high-pressure moments. Hardy's production at Penn State wasn't just about coverage, it included impact on special teams. Jamison has already been trusted in divisional games and a playoff environment. Henderson brings a linebacker-like physical profile from his college career that can translate into sub-packages or special teams roles. None of this is accidental. The same applies to the defensive front. Players like Kyler Baugh, Anthony Goodlow, KJ Henry, and Julius Welshoff are fighting in one of the most physically demanding areas of the roster. Keeping this many developmental defensive linemen signals that the Steelers want relentless competition there. Snap counts are earned, not inherited, and injuries along the line are inevitable over a long season. Depth isn't a luxury, it's survival. Offensively, the wide receiver group tells a quieter story of transition. With Adam Thielen retiring, there's no veteran shortcut being taken here. Instead, the Steelers are betting on youth, versatility, and upside. Cole Burgess represents raw production from a smaller program. Max Hurlman offers special teams value and returnability. John Reese Plumlee brings athletic flexibility that challenges traditional positional labels. Brandon Smith has already tasted multiple NFL locker rooms and understands how thin the margin for staying employed really is. That desperation, in a good way, fuels competition. Even at running back, Lou Nichols' presence matters more than fans might assume. A player who once led the nation in rushing doesn't forget how to run the football. What changes is opportunity. By keeping him in the building, the Steelers ensure that opportunity can present itself quickly if circumstances demand it. Up front, Stephen Jones, Doug Nestor, and Aiden Williams reflect patience. Offensive line development rarely happens overnight. These are players who have logged serious college snaps, learned different systems, and now continue to refine technique and consistency at the professional level. When injuries strike or rotation becomes necessary, familiarity with assignments and communication becomes priceless. All of this circles back to one central truth. The Steelers are building layers, not chasing quick fixes. They are trusting their process, trusting their evaluations, and trusting that competition